Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Cryptids of the Week video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's talk about a very fascinating random page entry here from the cryptids.wikia.com website. I love this particular entry because number one, it has to do with a cryptid that is very similar to a monster there in the Half-Life universe. And then number two, this cryptid on its own is apparently misinterpreted, or who knows, it may actually be the real deal of several other famous cryptids out there. And I'll talk about that more in a minute, and you'll see why. There's a theory for that too. But it's a very unique looking creature as well. Definitely something that looks like it's coming from another world, in this case, even the world of Zen from Half-Life. And it has to do with this. You're looking at it now. It's known as the Tullimonstrum. So let's go ahead and let's talk about all the fascinating info associated with this very unique cryptid. So what is this Tullimonstrum? Well, it goes by another name as well, a nickname of sorts, known as the Tully Monster. So that's another way, essentially, to categorize it. It's a creature that has been around for a very, very long time, over 300 million years as well, pretty much during a period known as the Pennsylvanian geological period. And if you go by the most common stated facts, it lived around that time and then it died, or basically went extinct, about 34 million years ago. That's the more common theory. The other theory, though, is that this is a creature that has passed that entire time period and still lives to this very day. So whatever the species is, clearly it might have been in this case some kind of potential dinosaur-like creature, not necessarily dinosaur, but lived during the dinosaur period, then it definitely pretty much stayed over the extinction of the dinosaurs to this very day. First, let's talk about the characteristics associated with this creature. There's a reason why I mentioned that it looks like it's something out of the world of Zen. It's a small, I guess, elongated type carnivorous invertebrate, and it at the maximum size goes to about 14 inches long. Remember, it reminded me of that creature, in this case of the leech from the Half-Life universe, because both of them have about the same size. They're both very carnivorous, and they have a very large mouth towards the front end of the creatures. And in this case, it's considered very soft-bodied. It has a I guess you could call it like these eyes that come out through the stalks on the side of it, almost like a snail, if you will. That's probably one of the most discernible features for it. It also has these two fins, some kind of posterior fins that also come out towards the left and the right. And then more prominently, it has a very large, broad tail fin on its end as well. But that mouth is definitely the one that stands out. This was something that was absolutely carnivorous, and it utilized that exterior, or whatever that was on the front claw-like mouth, to definitely make its killing all those years back. So this creature is very, very fascinating to look at. It would have been a wonder to have seen something like that in the real world. That ties into what's going on today with regards to this creature and how it's misinterpreted, or potentially being the actual creature for some of the cryptids out there. And here's what I mean. During its existence, it would have been in the swamp-like areas of what today is West Virginia, and in other parts of the U.S., the eastern and midwestern U.S. But that wasn't the only spot as well. It would have covered its land, like its area for its land would have covered also very large portions of Europe. Well, guess what else is somewhere there in Europe as well? None other than the infamous Loch Ness Monster. So the idea is this: if this creature truly lasted throughout the extinction of the dinosaurs and is still around to this very day, when you have something like this swimming those waters and then it raises its mouth, or it has its dorsal fins, or it has, in this case, the back of its tail, either one of those things protrude the top of the water, guess what it looks like? It looks like the top of a Loch Ness monster, especially with regards to something along the lines of that mouth. So the theory goes that this animal, or this species, this cryptid, whatever it is, the way it's living in all those lakes and rivers, it may just have a misinterpreted image of the Loch Ness Monster itself. Fascinating, though, isn't it? The idea that all this time people are thinking that the Loch Ness Monster may be something like a plesiosaurus, but it's not. It could be something like this, a tiny creature that, just because of the way the optical illusion is from the water, the waves, the cresting of the waves themselves, and then of course people not really getting a good sight of it. All they see is just the top portion of the water itself. What they're looking at could be this Tully monster. And the idea is that this creature, because it's so seclusive, like reclusive, doesn't necessarily, of course, come out of the water anytime on a consistent basis, then it just leads more into the notion that yes, it could be that Loch Ness monster, or there's another one associated with another cryptid, a second, like a bonus, if you will, known as the Linworm. So as far as so many interpretations, this could be tied to the Tully monster, and where it populates to this day, it may just have its own sightings every now and then, where people think, oh my goodness, what is that? And that could be this creature in of itself. I would love to see something like this out there to this very day, just to see how it looks, just to see how it swims, especially, again, like I was mentioning earlier, with regards to that claw-like monster. That claw-like mouth, the one on the front of it. So popular is this creature that it consisted of an entire subject within a book called The Great Worm of Loch Ness. It has to do with an investigator of the Loch Ness monster known as Ted Holliday. In it, he also stated a theory that every kind of sighting that's associated with the Loch Ness could just be this Tully monster, in his words, skulking around Europe. And then that's why these tourists, whenever they go there, or anyone that lives there as well, then that's when they misinterpret this creature. Here's the only thing, though, that I have a problem with: the size of this creature, of this Tully monster. Remember, I was mentioning this largest one is about 14 inches long. That's barely a foot long. So when you're thinking of something like the Loch Ness monster, and there's another thing too, apparently it's been misinterpreted as dragons as well. None of those creatures are small. They're all gigantic. They're all pretty much larger than life, unless we're dealing with like a baby one. But something like this, 14 inches long, even if you just see the top of it on, let's say, whatever the cresting waters are, even if you just see that top portion, you're not going to see much of it at all. You're probably going to see just a few inches of it. So how can something that small be considered something as large, or a visible portion as large as the Loch Ness monster, as large as Nessie himself? It's kind of difficult to I guess take that in. And so that's why I'm wondering, are there larger examples of this Tully monster? If even the largest one, based on fossils, is around 14 inches long, maybe, just maybe, throughout the entire time period, all these millions of years up until today, maybe it started growing. And if it did start growing, then that's where you'll have something like this being a much larger size than before. But that's just my theory with regards to this creature. But yes, the only other thing I wanted to mention is that any associations with it to this day, it's just pretty much considered a prototypical lake monster. I wonder, though, how it could be considered more on the lines of a cryptid if it was truly a dinosaur. Maybe it's just along something else, where it's like the Burunjor, like one of my more infamous, famous, like most viewed videos on here, is considered a cryptid today because it's a long lost dinosaur. In this case, a T-Rex that's roaming out there in Australia. So maybe this such a case is here with this Tully monster, wherever this thing is to this very day. If it survived all those time periods and it's here in the U.S. or maybe somewhere out there in Europe, then it could be also considered a long lost creature, maybe dinosaur, from that era. So that's why it would be considered a cryptid as well. So what do you guys think about this Tully monster? Is it truly out there somewhere in this world to this very day? If it is, do you think, at least in my case, that it should be something like some from the level of Zen from Half-Life, which I would love? I mean, if it was truly something like that, and it was a carnivorous leech just munching here and there, to see something like that out there in the open, that would be just amazing to do so. Or do you truly think it's been misinterpreted as so many other cryptids, either A, a dragon, B, a Linworm, or C, more infamously, as the Loch Ness monster? Then please post those comments below, share them as well. So anybody out there, by the way, in Europe, anybody towards the Loch Ness Monster area, if you happen to have seen even a tinier portion of it and think that that might be tied to this Tully Monster, then please post those comments. That would be really good to share as well. So all right, everybody, thanks again as always. Take care.